Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Board Game Blog number 28. This is for Monday, June 16th, 2014. Today is kind of a housekeeping, house cleaning kind of episode. Don't have one overarching topic, just a couple of things I wanted to go over. First thing I'm going to talk about is Doomtown Reloaded. And so I've recently done a review of that about a week ago, and at the time of posting this video, I'm going to go ahead and put up 4 separate videos based on each of the 4 different starter decks that come with the base game. I talked to some folks that wanted a lot more information about the game, and talked to one guy, and he said, you know, why don't you do like a spoiler of each of the decks? I said, hey, that sounds pretty cool. Never done anything like that before. So I went ahead and put those up. So I'll put links to those in the description of this video. Second thing I wanted to talk about was I actually had a chance to play it multiplayer since posting the review previously, which I'd only played 2-player games with. I'm going to do a quick kind of review of that, and it was pretty fun. The luck and things that you sort of, you have to flop for turn order to just get your 5-card poker hand. That was a little bit more prevalent with the multiplayer game. And we played a 3-player game, so you kind of had that odd man out being the winner. In my case, I was actually competing or cooperating with a friend of mine to block the guy that was, he came out with a very strong lead using the Sloan Gang deck and built up some quick control at the beginning of the game, and so we kind of cooperated to take him down a little bit. And that actually kind of hurt me because he was able to shotgun one of my guys and play some other effects to really set me back. So I kind of built back up, but in the meantime they were kind of taking each other out, and then I was able to use the cattle ranch deck, whatever that's called, I forget the name of it, and builds up some slow control using some of the ranches and some of the abilities that go along with the ranches. So I was able to get that up. One guy was basically proverbially eliminated from the game, not technically, but he was pretty down and out, and then I kind of made my move with my flamethrower equipped cowboy and got the win there. So it was really fun. It took us a little bit to get over the rules, so that was cool, but it took about an hour to play with all 3 of us, and it was fun. We all agreed that we would like to play it again, and I think with the kind of the right group, this would really excel. People that could get really into the theme of it, and I think there's a lot of room here for cool multiplayer formats. A lot of times, I can't think of a good multiplayer format that works for one of the more popular trading card or living card style of games, other than like a 2-headed giant style of game. But this one, you could do a lot of stuff. You could do a kind of a team atmosphere, some other different things, maybe some different special multiplayer type objectives and things. So it worked really well, on a multiplayer, and it was very different. Definitely, just want to reiterate, this is a game that I think everyone should at least check out. Obviously no game is for everybody, but I think this is one that may appeal to people who normally stay away from this style of game because it works on a whole different level. A lot of different things going on that are very different from your sort of mano-a-mano head-to-head stuff. Even in a 2-player game, you've got a lot of other considerations beyond just kind of bashing each other in the face the whole time. So anyway, that's Doomtown, and definitely take a look at the links I put for each of the starter decks, and you can kind of get a better idea of all the different sort of variety of cards that are in each of those decks. So the next thing I'll talk about, I'm going to go ahead and do some blacklisting, and then I'm going to get to reviewing some games that I did a micro review afterwards. And sort of an interesting idea is all of these games that I'm blacklisting, they're kind of smaller games, so it's kind of like a bunch of micro blacklists, if you will. I mentioned that I'm discontinuing the geek list, for those keeping score or whatever, and I'm just going to kind of let them get critical mass, and then once I get enough of them, then I'll just kind of stick them in a blog, and that's what I'm doing here. So the first one, the first 2 I should say, are basically kind of like on the cusp. I wouldn't necessarily think that they're 100% blacklist worthy. I do think they are games that people can enjoy, probably, and I don't think there's anything sort of mathematically wrong with them as opposed to the last 3, which I feel are like kind of mathematically bad. So anyway, the first one is Valley of the Kings. It's a newer release from AEG, and actually the first time I played it, I actually kind of enjoyed it. It was very interesting. It's a kind of a micro deck builder, where instead of a normal row of cards or a giant selection of cards, you have this pyramid of cards that you're buying from, and you can always buy from the bottom row of the pyramid, but you can do different special abilities from the cards that you get to manipulate the pyramid. But at the end of the day, you're just really doing a set collection of various Egyptian artifacts and trying to collect a set of those. So it was interesting at first, but it just became very bland. And a lot of the adjectives that a lot of people that don't like Euros like to throw at Euros, all those adjectives were going through my head. So kind of no theme, no attachment to the theme at least, just kind of very dry and methodical, and just kind of felt like I was going through the motions with it. It's got some take that stuff, which is kind of neat. You don't usually see that in a deck builder. This is kind of one I just kind of like, people say something falls flat, and I would say this falls flat. I didn't necessarily hate the game or think it was bad or poorly designed, but it was just kind of like, well, there's so many thousands of deck builders out there that why would I even bother with this one? The next game in the list is a game that is a sort of a sequel or follow-up to a game I hated that came out a long time ago. And the only reason I'm kind of caveating this one because it seems like a lot of people really like this one and I just don't. And that's this Bang the Dice game. I never liked the card game, and I don't think the dice game really improves on it at all. And it kind of gets back to the same thing with Valley of Kings. There's so many of these sort of trader / deduction quick games like Resistance and One Night Werewolf, which frankly I should do a review on. I don't own a copy. Two of my friends have a copy of it, and I got to snag one from them just to do a review. Just to kind of pile on the praise of that one, because that one is really at the cusp of basically being the full-on replacement for Resistance for us. And now I still have to get Avalon and try that one. I haven't tried Avalon. I know that adds a lot more game to it. But One Night Werewolf, Resistance Avalon, Coup, there's a bunch of these different style of sort of, trader, lying kind of negotiation quick games that Bang the Dice game doesn't really add anything, at all to it. And the dice rolling it's almost like too much of a handcuff on being able to get at the heart of the matter, which is, trying to outfox people, get them to, point the blame at somebody else and all that stuff. And there's no reason to play it. There's no reason to play it at all. Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you there, but everybody else seems to really like it, so go figure. The next three here are ones that I consider kind of mathematically broken. And the first one is Say Bye to Villains, which was the first game that I played that said, oh, Seiji Kanai is human. He's not like this, crazy genius descended from heaven to create games like I thought he was. It's really the first game I have completely not enjoyed from him. So that's kind of good news. He's not a perfection. He's not perfect. So anyway, this one really breaks down because it's a co-op game where players have a hand of cards, but in the rules it says you can't tell each other what your hand of cards is, so you're trying to play cards to kind of hint that, I'm trying to attack this villain and then you're going to combo off of me, but man, that just kind of breaks down. So it breaks down the whole idea of a co-op for me. The idea is that you work together and you kind of puzzle out the problem instead of me trying to guess. Well, then that also gets doubly compounded because no matter what you do, you're either going to guess at the right cards that you played, you're going to guess at the wrong cards, and then you flip all the cards to the villain and you find out if you won. So there's almost zero strategy in a sense, because it just feels like, oh, it was already baked into the cards whether you were going to win or lose anyway. So again, kind of the whole going through the motions idea. And all it is adding numbers and plus or minus this or that. So it very much just kind of falls flat. There's no theme to it, and it's a small game, it's a small co-op, so I was kind of excited for it, but at the end of the day, it just kind of, crashes and burns. The second game was also from Seiji Kanai, is My Star. And this is one that we played, I think, about 6 times because we first liked it. First time we played it, like, this is cool, it's great. Everybody is a geisha, which is a weird, interesting kind of theme. I don't really know much about that world, but it was kind of different. And, one of the players was kind of like, why are we playing a game about this? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't really know anything about it, so I don't know if it's a misogynistic theme or not. But the gameplay was very interesting at first, but there's definitely one geisha card that is completely broken. And basically the idea is each player takes a geisha card as their avatar, and then you get these little advertiser / customer cards that you can play. Well, this one has a special ability that isn't really good or bad, but the beginning stats on it are so high that you can basically play through your whole hand without really having to think about it. So we actually took her out of the game after a few plays and said, man, she's just like winning every game, or it's so easy for you to win. And so we took her out, and the game was definitely much more balanced. But again, there's another geisha in there that's I call it the blue one, where if you play a blue card to score, then you get to play another one immediately. And so that was another one that's also just much better than a couple of the others that were just kind of mediocre to kind of, you know, just okay. But the other problem with that, on top of that, you could kind of fix that. But the problem is a lot of these are, you score them, and then when you score them, you destroy somebody's advertisers, because you kind of play cards either to score or to advertise. Well, if I just scored, I got points. That should be enough. I shouldn't be able to then attack somebody and bring their advertisers down. So that's kind of like doubly compounding the gain of it. So you should be able to choose, you know, I'm either going to score or I'm going to advertise, and not like score and zap your engine. So that was kind of a letdown. The last game here is a String Savannah, another kind of micro-ish type of game, kind of a follow-up to String Railways, which is very good. Haven't reviewed that, don't own a copy. I played that a couple of times, some friends have it, and I would recommend that one for sure. String Savannah is sort of a follow-up, so instead of making routes and networks, you're trying to encircle different animals and sort of collect them and tag them, and, you know, it's kind of a conservationist kind of, you know, approach, which is a cool theme. But the game really, you always are going to be able to piece out the optimal play, and everybody's going to be able to do that at the table for you. So you're going to put it out, and then you just figure out how many possible animals can I, you know, surround with a string. And it just becomes almost like a cooperative where, okay, yes, you can get all these, but oh, can you get the one more? Well, let's see. Let's help you just do it, because it's going to take somebody long enough to see if they can stretch that string around. There's nothing really in the rules preventing you from doing that. And I don't know why there would be, because, you know, it's not like you can lay it down and like, oh, you're stuck. It's not a dexterity thing where you drop the string and it covers what it covers. And that would be a different story. But at the end of the day, it's one of those, again, this is hugely offensive in terms of letting you just go through the motions. I mean, it just fires on all cylinders at that point. It's like all I'm doing is going through the motions. There's like zero game, zero choice here. You know, that's it. It's really kind of falls flat. Whereas String Railways, you got some choices between the cards and, you know, trying the connections and who am I going to kind of piggyback off of or give points to and stuff like that. So anyway, those are the 5 Blacklist games. And the last 2 things I'm going to talk about are 2 games that I did micro reviews for. One was the Firefly expansion, Pirates and Bounty Hunters, and then the Relic expansion, Relic Nemesis. Had a chance to play those since doing the initial videos. Let's talk about Firefly first. This is the one I talked with some folks about it, and I don't think, if you didn't like the base game of Firefly, which I quite enjoy, this expansion is not going to fix it for you, I do not think. It's still pretty much the same idea, but there's some interesting stuff with how the PvP is going to play out. So you have 2 basically kinds of missions that have to deal with PvP. So I think I like one more than the other. So it's kind of 2 different games really to discuss here. The first one is basically sort of like your normal Firefly. You fly around, you do some jobs, and then you want to get solid with some of the different contacts so you can buy contraband and parts and things like that. And then you want to, after that point, you want to make certain runs back to your haven. You set up a little haven at the beginning of the game and then deliver those to your haven, and that's how you get your gold tokens and win. So in the process of that, then players are going to be sort of intercepting you and, you know, boarding you, possibly, you know, completing bounties and things, and they're trying to stop you from doing that. Well, the problem is if 2 people kind of get in a squabble early on, it's kind of this whole thing of then the other folks that were building up and teching out their ship and getting those deliveries going, they are going to run away with it because the other people are too busy fighting. So that's kind of an issue, but I think if you were to add a lot of players, that would be less likely, but then the game would just go on, I think, forever because everybody would just be slogging with each other. So that one's kind of a mediocre kind of thing, but that's going to kind of just depend on the play group and how people play the game out. So I can see the experience varying quite greatly with that particular scenario. Now the second one is basically insane to just go out and PvP the heck out of each other. So you're going to get gold tokens for trying to do the bounties, for smuggling and boarding, you know, the other ships and stealing goods. That's what you're going to do. That one's really interesting because everybody kind of techs up, and you have this sort of a Cold War aspect. So am I strong enough to go take you out? Am I strong enough to take you out? And so that one is pretty interesting because it just says go PvP each other, and that one feels like almost like the most Firefly. We have this very competitive ships going around doing jobs, but also really trying to screw each other over, and it's not very friendly. So that one feels to me like the best way to play it. But at the end of the day, with this one, I almost kind of rather just play kind of this laid back beer and pretzel style base game. So I do like that they've added this stuff, so it feels almost like a talisman or a relic, funnily enough, where you have this sort of system that you can just tack on a whole bunch of stuff. You know, they've announced another expansion coming out, so you can really kind of tailor the experience to what you want to do. And to me, I'd rather have a little bit of fun with it, not be so aggressive with the Firefly theme, because the Firefly sort of, you know, the TV show and everything has a kind of a nice, easygoing sense of humor about it. I'd rather just kind of play that laid-back game of just kind of a nice pick up and deliver, tech up your ship, get the little cool stories together with the different characters. But I don't hate it. I'm not like I would never play it with PvP, but I don't think it would fix it for anybody unless you really like that antagonistic play a lot. But then I would just play the one mission where it's just like get in each other's face. Otherwise, you're going to get into an issue where the guy that gets left alone, he just kind of runs away with it, because he's not only has he started delivering his goods and stuff to his haven, but now he's teched up his ship and he hasn't gotten messed with. So there's that. So this last thing I want to talk about is Relic Nemesis and the expansion for that, and that also adds PvP to the game. But I think it fits a little bit better in this case, because even with the base game, you could kind of screw players over just subtly with some of the certain cards and abilities you can get. And again, this has different modes of PvP. And I think kind of my favorite is the one I didn't play last. So the most recent way that I played it was actually we played a kind of team game. Now normally it says to play it with the 4 players. One person takes a character, one player takes a nemesis, and the other player take a character and a nemesis. And so they work together as a team. We actually played it 2-player, where one person had one team and the other person had the other, and that was really fun. There's that aspect, and then you have kind of the apostate rule with no nemesis, but you can add a little bit of PvP in there. And so I really like all the different modes. And there's even one that I haven't played, which is like fully co-op, Nemesis versus Imperium players. And again, this is kind of a cool thing, because it just gives you another little kind of toolbox way to play the game, a nice little variation. I could easily play just kind of normal Relic, run around, have a good time, get weapons and all that stuff. But this adds the modes, and they feel a little bit more integrated into the core game and kind of part of the main experience, almost to the point where, I mean, they separated it for good reason, but this could have just been part of the base game with the PvP and the Nemesis and stuff. I mean, I don't think they should have done that, but it feels very integral to each other. The one thing with Relic, it definitely does make that game take longer. And really doesn't matter the player count, because you have the Nemesis sort of setting up these traps for people and putting out extra encounters, so the board is going to kind of stay fuller of cards than if, for example, like the last time I played it without any of the new stuff, was just 4 players, and we were doing a pretty good job, especially once we kind of get going, of defeating the encounters and moving along. Whereas this one, even though it was only 2 players playing, it was still technically a 4-player game. There was tons of cards on the board for like the whole game, and there was a lot more deaths and KOs and stuff, because you can really go in and attack people, get them when they're vulnerable. So the game's just going to kind of protract a little bit. So if you don't want that extra length, that maybe we'll stay away from that, at least until players are really familiar with how to play. Now the Nemesis turn some kinds can be very anticlimactic, because it's very quick. You kind of just go here, flip a card, and do something. There's not a lot to sort of tinker with the Nemesis. So I think it was actually a good idea that we played it 2-player. I didn't expect that going in, but it kind of gave us, a little bit more to mess with, and it was very doable as a one-on-one game. I didn't expect that to actually work as well as it did. So okay, so anyway, that's kind of it. So there you go. There's kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, and a little bit more good. Okay, thanks.